And Parker on the defensive side of the ball making that adjustment from Alex Grinch to the current regime. Is there anything that you've been able to get a hold of during the news conferences that's talked about in terms of the defensive differences that is going to be what the players need to learn at this point?
Yeah, well, it's just picking up all of the packages, because Alex Grinch's defense was very, very simple. They just had a few base plays that they would run, and there'd be different variations of each of those plays. If you watch Brent Venables' defense on tape, Mark, I'm sure it's no secret to you, it's havoc. It's chaos. It's the kitchen sink. He's running a zillion different blitz packages. He's bringing linebackers. He's bringing defensive backs. He's stunting. He's dropping defensive linemen into zone coverage. And so there are so many different things that Brent Venables can throw at you and will throw at you. And it requires a massive amount of buy-in from the players on the defensive side of the ball, because if one dude busts, then it can all fall apart, right? And so I think that's going to be the biggest adjustment, is just being able to grasp all of the different formations, all of the different fronts that Venables is going to use in his playbook. And not only that, but once you grasp all those formations and all those fronts, just being able to keep pace and keep up to speed with all the bizarre play designs and oftentimes very effective play designs that he implements.
And I've got to think, Parker, one of the things that makes him one of the best in the business, if not the best, hands down, is not just the ability to go in the lab and dream all that up and figure it out, but then to teach it, because we've seen examples of other top level programs where there's, let's say, an NFL guy. I think of Ohio State a few years ago with Greg Schiano, great football mind, great coach, put in a scheme that was at the NFL level too complex for the defense. The athletes weren't able just to let it fly and run and hit, and they couldn't figure it out. But to be able to implement it because of the teaching aspect is another aspect of the genius of Brent Venables.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Mark. And that's also where Oklahoma's expanded staff comes into play, because one of the bigger storylines surrounding the construction of this football program from the ground up in the aftermath of Lincoln Riley's departure and the advent of the Brent Venables era is just how many more off-field analysts, how many more support staff are in place at Oklahoma. And where that comes into play when you're talking about being able to implement your system and your scheme and being able to teach it is when you have all of these analysts, many of whom have coached at the Power 5 level and played the game at a very high level as well. Perfect example, one of their analysts right now is Matt Wells, who was Texas Tech's head coach last year. And so when you have so many experienced guys who are serving your program in support roles, what those guys can do is they can run practice from an administrative and an organizational standpoint. And that allows the coaches, that allows not only Brent Venables, but Todd Bates, Cale Gundy, Jay Valai, to really dig in with their players and actually coach them, actually point out, hey, here's where you can improve on this. Here's where your technique is coming up short. Here's one thing that you can improve on rep to rep. And so when they're really able to get down in the heat of battle on the practice field with their guys and coach them up more so than just standing there with whistles and overseeing everything from a big picture standpoint, that's where you have the chance to make meaningful change. That's where you have the opportunity to accelerate the learning process with your players.